Welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Veronica Lopez. I'm a business counselor manager here at Pace Business. Today's topic is Tzedek, Small Business Essentials. It's a four-part series. So today's topic is 5 legal tips every small business owner should know. Today's featured guest speaker is Mar Harris, Esquire LMM and attorney with Small Business Development Program at Tzedek Legal Services. So today's webinar is scheduled for 1 hour, but before we begin, I'll just do some light housekeeping and a PACE intro. So you're all on listening mode. We'll play it by ear. If you like to raise your hand and ask questions, we will have that ability. We do have a Q&A. You can enter them in the Q&A section, or you can enter them in the chat box. Our presentation is packed with a lot of nooks and crannies, so we are going to wait until the end of the presentation to answer all your questions. However, you are encouraged as your questions come up throughout the presentation, please enter them in the chat box. We wouldn't want to miss any questions. Leave a love note for me and I will filter through the different questions and hopefully we'll get to them all before the end of today's session. Today's webinar is being recorded. You can visit our e-library and it will be available there. Our Zoom takes about 4 hours to process, but everyone who's attending today will receive a copy of today's webinar presentation. We also encourage you to give us feedback either on today's webinar or on future webinar topics. So please encourage you to fill out today's survey. It will pop up as soon as you finish today's webinar at any time that you leave throughout today's presentation. So about PACE. PACE is a nonprofit organization in the LA area. It's a community-based organization that provides economic justice by providing solutions to the problems of poverty, economic inequality, and minority, ethnic, and immigrant communities, and all others are welcome, of course. Our core programs consist of workforce development, early childhood education, energy and environmental services, affordable housing, and business development. Here on your screen, you can see a little bit more about the Business Center. So we offer one-on-one consultations, an entrepreneurial training program. It's a 10-part session. It's in person. It's a very comprehensive training on how to start a business, but we have a lot of operating businesses that also attend. So I would encourage you, if you'd be interested in more in person and interacting with other entrepreneurs, to attend the training. And today's course is part of our many available business courses. And I'm just going to give you a shout out to our existing workshops, encourage you to attend that as well. And also PACE offers PACE Finance Corporations. We offer small business lending from $500 to $350,000. And we're also a technical service provider. So we will help you process a loan for a bank or another CFI like PACE. And then also through our partnership with our other department, through our employment services, we have a WorkSource Center with the City of Los Angeles. The most sought after program, we have an incentive program that covers half of an employee's salary for the first 6 months for you to help retain that employee and cover the cost of hiring a new employee. Okay, so here's just a shout out to some of our upcoming webinars. Our next is another series from Bank of America, and it starts tomorrow. And then the following week, we have a financial boot camp for small business owners. You can scan the QR code to more information if you're not already signed up for our e-newsletter. Okay, so today's main presentation, I'd like to reintroduce you to Mar Harris, attorney at Small Business Development Program, Tzedek Legal Services. So I would like us to get to know our speaker a little bit better. So Attorney Mar, you can all call her Mar, is a dedicated staff attorney at Tzedek Legal Services. She provides essential legal support to low-income Los Angeles County individuals working to establish, maintain, and protect their intellectual property rights. With over 13 years of specialized experience in intellectual property, entertainment, media, and business law, Mar merges her expertise with a strong commitment to helping clients navigate the complex legal landscape. Her primary focus is protecting intellectual property, ensuring clients can fully realize and safeguard their creative endeavors. So Mar works collaboratively collaboratively with legal externs, pro bono attorneys, and community partners to offer comprehensive assistance and support to those they serve, similar to PACE. She is proud to be part of a team that empowers low-income entrepreneurs, facilitating economic development and promoting social justice within the community. Her dedication to making a positive impact is evident in the team's approach to each case, consistently prioritizing the needs and goals of their clients. So, Mar looks forward to speaking today at today's uh, PACE's community of small business owners. So, with that, I'm just going to switch my screen. And everyone, please welcome Attorney Mar. You can enter it in the chat and the Q&A, but please welcome today's
Thank
speaker.
you. Thank you, Veronica. So I'll kind of skip past my spiel because you introduced me so well. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar. I am feeling a little bit sick, so please excuse me. And I may speak a little quickly because we have a lot of information to get through. So we will reserve time at the end for questions, but I encourage you to put any questions you have during the presentation in the chat so you don't forget them, and we'll try to get to them in the end. I'm gonna stop at 150. So again, I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. My name is Mar Harris, and as Veronica stated, I'm an attorney in the Small Business Development Program at Tzedek Legal Services. And in today's session, we will discuss considerations for the success that will add to the success of a small business. And these topics will include business formation, intellectual property, compliance with local regulations, and risk management. And so our goal at BetZedek and our small business development program is to equip you, the small business owner, with legal insights that can help safeguard your business and contribute to its long-term success. So at BetZedek, we firmly believe that access to justice should be universal. And since our inception in 1974, we have dedicated ourselves to providing free, high quality legal services to underserved communities within Los Angeles. Um, we recognize that navigating legal compliance can be daunting, so we try to make this process as easy as possible through our legal services and direct representation. And in our specific program, again, we help small business owners and entrepreneurs. So yeah, so next slide. And today we'll go over the top tips for small business success, as I mentioned. And through our small business program, we engage the community through presentations, comprehensive guides, and direct client representation. We are committed to effectively addressing small business owners' diverse needs. We aim to empower small business owners by providing the tools and resources necessary for sustained success. And I'll skip through the rest so we can get to the meat of this presentation. And in our program, we specifically address these types of legal issues. We help with intellectual property matters through advising clients how to protect their intellectual property through trademarks and copyright registration. And we assist with insurance questions, bankruptcy questions, employment law, and one of our main legal areas is business formation and how to decide which business structure is appropriate for your business and your goals. We also assist with contracts, analyzing, drafting, um, negotiating, all of those wonderful things associated with contracts. And we assist our small business owners with navigating commercial leases, which is an important aspect for small business owners, especially if you have a brick and mortar. You want to make sure that you are receiving legal assistance with reviewing leases so you can potentially prevent yourself from falling into the pitfalls of a bad commercial lease. So next, please. Okay, so clients may qualify for our pro bono legal services by meeting specific household income thresholds as well as business profits and sales figures. These thresholds are reviewed annually by our program based on the grants that we receive and funding that we receive from our funders. And we offer these legal services through our program specifically for-profit firms and not nonprofit. However, if you do have a nonprofit, we can provide the necessary services if you need assistance in that area as well. And we specifically focus on entrepreneurs and small business owners in Los Angeles County. And again, we aim to empower local small business owners and entrepreneurs to navigate the legal landscape effectively so that we can help them with the success of their business. And yes, I believe Veronica will supply the video and/or materials at the end. So thank you. Next slide, please. And also feel free to contact our department using this information. And you can also, since you can't click on this, but you can also look up Tzedek Legal Services Small Business Development Program, and on our landing page, we have the application to our program, as well as other resources for, I don't know, loans, funding, other other webinars that we have in the works. So please feel free to reach out to me, take down my information, and if you have specific questions, I can send you our application and get the ball rolling should you want our services. And so now I will get into the disclaimer. The information provided today is intended to help identify legal issues relevant to small businesses in the state of California. Many factors must be considered when determining the most appropriate actions and decisions for your particular business. This presentation discusses only some key aspects and is not meant to serve as legal advice. After reviewing this presentation, and your specific matters, we encourage you to reach out to an attorney or seek the services of our small business development program, as you should decide well on the best course of action for your specific circumstances. So again, you want to make sure that if you have specific questions, you don't simply rely on this general information, but that you reach out to our department or a qualified attorney. And so today's agenda, we will go over these topics. So starting your business and entity formation. So we want you to understand the difference between the business structures, LLC, corporation, or sole proprietorship, and also business liability, taxes, and ownership. We also will discuss briefly, we'll also discuss briefly the procedures for setting up a business with the state of California, and we will also discuss licensing and compliance, commercial tenancy issues, what is a contract, how to enter a contract, types of intellectual property like copyrights, trademarks, trade dress, and patents. We'll discuss very briefly and how they will relate to your small business, and then we'll also discuss some aspects of employment law. So next slide, please. First, what is an LLC versus a California stock corporation? And so first, establishing a legal entity can protect you personally and your personal assets and your business from liabilities and create a distinct operational framework. Types of entities, so various structures exist, including a sole proprietorship, which you basically don't need to register for. And if, as a sole proprietor, you expose yourself and your personal assets to liability should you get sued. Then there are also partnerships, LLCs, corporations, and the choice of entity will impact your personal liability, the business liability, as well as it impacts taxation on your business, your personal income as well. And it also affects the operational complexity of your business. So firstly, A limited liability, the structure of such an entity combines a corporation's liability with a partnership's tax flexibility. And this means that with an okay, this is a lot of information. So again, I encourage you to reach out to our small business program. But with an LLC for taxation, it's pass through, which allows pass-through taxation on profits and losses to be reported on the owner's own personal tax returns, avoiding double taxation. The management of an LLC is often more flexible in structure and less formal than a corporation. And a California stock corporation is a formal business structure with distinct ownership shares and more rigidity in management. You must have a board of directors and hold regular meetings. This is a requirement. The taxation for a California corporation is subject to corporate tax rates as opposed to filing gains and losses on your personal taxes. And considerations when deciding between an LLC and a California stock corporation depends on asset protection, how you want to treat your taxes, management, growth opportunities, and whether or not you want a board of directors to decide on the most important aspects of the business, and assets, exposure, reputation, contracts. So assets, you want to evaluate the assets that the business will own or utilize. And so choosing a corporate structure will determine how these business assets and personal assets are protected. You want to also assess potential liabilities the business face, such as lawsuits, debts, or operational risks. And understanding these complex issues, again, will add to the type of structure that you'll choose for your small business. And the chosen entity structure can either add to the reputation of the business or subtract from it uh, and their credibility. In the marketplace, corporations tend to convey more permanence and trust rather than sole proprietorships and LLCs. And again, if you have questions on which business structure is best for your business, you can reach out to our department and fill out an application, and we can walk you through those different business structures and help you decide which is best for your particular situation. So next slide. Actually, let's go back to the previous one. I want to discuss an S corp because this is also an important entity structure that people tend to ask about. And an S corporation is a special designation through the IRS. So you would set up an LLC, and then if you want the specific tax benefits of an S corporation, then you would also fill out um, you would fill out a application, a form with the IRS for that particular designation, and they'll, what's the word I'm looking for? Assess your business and whether or not you are eligible for that type of tax designation. And this allows profits to be passed through to the shareholders, again, to avoid double taxation while maintaining corporate liability. To be eligible for an S corp, you must be a domestic corporation with no more than 100 shareholders, all of whom must be individuals. It can't be a partnership, corporation, or non-resident aliens. The benefits primarily are tax savings. You will receive lower overall tax liability, which can result, um, well, okay, lower tax liability can result, sorry, since salary, excuse me. So lower tax liability can result since only salaries and not distributions are subject to self-employment tax. So operating as a corporation again may enhance the credibility of your business because it implies permanence and and it again enhance the reputation through its permanence. Also, let's see. when you have an S corp, you have to meet certain requirements imposed by the IRS, and you have to continuously keep detailed records because you may be audited by the IRS. And if they determine at any time that you fall below the requisite impositions, then they can take away that tax designation from your business. So again, it's important to always stay abreast of the requirements imposed by the IRS and to keep detailed records. So next slide, please. Okay, licenses and compliance. So as a business, it's important to obtain a federal EIN, which is the employer identification number. You'll need this for EDD and other aspects of operating a business in the free market. And obtaining a federal EIN number is free. You can have multiple numbers for different businesses. And it's basically like a social security number, but for the business. And it's issued by the IRS to identify your business for tax purposes, and you'll go to the irs.gov and fill out the requisite form and submit it. And generally, you'll get an EIN within a few days. And depending on if you've registered previously for one, it could be instantaneously. And you can submit your application via mail, online, or fax, depending on your preference. And then the next is the California Government Online to desktops, the calgold.ca.gov. This helps your business find local regulations, permits, and licenses specific to your location and your industry. So, for example, certain industries require certain licenses, like if you're a hairdresser versus a I don't know, a general contractor versus a lawyer. Those all require certain licenses, and this website helps you determine what your business will need. And it will also assist you with finding out which local permits, again, or licenses you may need. And you can also fill out a local business license on this website. Uh, the next is the Corporate Transparency Act. This is a really big issue that's been in, I guess, in the courts and the news as of recently. This act is to encourage or require more transparency amongst the beneficial owners of businesses. So owners of LLCs in all 50 states must register by March 21st. So yeah, like 3 days. And initially, failure to register your information would have resulted in a $500 a day fine and up to a certain amount of years in prison if you don't comply. But because it's still making its way through the court system, they have extended the deadline to comply a couple of times, and then as of now, they're not going to issue any penalties for not complying by March 21st, as again, it's still making its way through the court system, and they're still trying to determine how to iron out certain aspects of this law. And yeah, so you'll have to stay abreast, and we highly recommend you do so, of this law to make sure that you don't end up facing any fines or penalties. Next slide, please. Okay, so commercial tenancies. As a small business owner and you have a brick and mortar, this will be an important aspect of your business because of entering into a really bad commercial tenancy agreement can make or break your business. And so one of the most important aspects, or there's like a few, is assessing the physical location needs. So you want to evaluate whether a physical location is essential for the operation of your business, or if it would be better to have a virtual office, or a virtual office which you can sign up for online. These allow you to have a designated address, a professional address, and potentially a receptionist and other types of business considerations that make your specific business look a little bit more professional, and they tend to cost a few $100s a month. And so this will save you from having to enter into a long or costly commercial tenancy. So this is something to consider. You also want to analyze the square footage based on your needs and expected growth, accessibility, and location. So, depending on the commercial lease, as opposed to residential leases, you are most likely going to be responsible for many of the aspects of the physical space, like making sure it's compliant with ADA laws. And I've seen in my own experience that running afoul of ADA law and not making sure that the physical space is accessible to persons with disabilities can also make or break your business. I've seen people get sued left and right. So this is an important thing to look for in a commercial lease is who will be responsible for making improvements to make sure that the building is compliant. And you also want to discuss like who will be responsible for renovations to the building and when the rent will commence, when rent will start, uh, how the space, well, how you'll have to leave the space upon leaving, and maybe look at the penalties for terminating the lease early, or if you have to return the physical space to its original state. So there's a lot of different aspects, or if you have to give a personal guarantee. If you have to give a personal guarantee in the commercial lease, then that means if anything goes wrong, you could personally be liable for whatever goes wrong in that situation, as opposed to your LLC or your corporation, which is supposed to buffer any personal liability. So that's something you also want to take into consideration. So we highly recommend that you have an attorney review all of well, review your commercial tenancy if and when you decide to enter into one. And then the trustworthiness of the property owner or the management company is very important. You want to look at reviews online and its history with tenants. Again, you should be able to find these on Yelp and other places um, to help aid in your decision as to whether or not this particular location will be best for your business. You can also do background checks on the owner. You can ask for references and maybe look at the legal standing of the business. And uh, within the agreement itself, you want to see if either the business itself or an individual will sign the lease, as whether the business or an individual signs a lease and not an agent of the business. And will impose certain liabilities, which will highly affect your business. So these are important things to look at. Additional considerations that you want to look into when you're signing or considering signing a lease is a lease length and the terms. You want to look at how rent will be increased and make sure that falls in line with your proposed business growth and your finances as a business. You want to look into whether or not insurance is required, zoning laws, who will be responsible for utilities and maintenance. These could all add to the expense of running your business. So these are important things to consider. Uh, yes, let me see. I'm We will get into trademarks, Mr. Spears. This is kind of like a general review, but we'll get to that. So next slide, contracts. What is a contract? So a contract is a legally binding agreement between two or more parties that establishes mutual obligations. It requires at least two parties for the contract to be valid who agree on specific terms. And next, we'll discuss the importance of a verbal agreement versus a written. Obviously, as a business owner, you want to make sure that any agreement you enter into is reduced to writing, so it's not based off of memory or hearsay. You want concrete evidence of what each party is agreeing to, and this will help you later mitigate any issues. And with that said, verbal agreements are valid. However, for a verbal agreement to be valid, it must involve the sale of goods or services that are under the amount of $500, and whatever service that is to be provided must be done in under a year. And there are certain agreements that cannot be verbal, like marriage contracts or the sale of property. And okay, so an offer is a binding promise. Acceptance is the acceptance of each party to those binding promises. And consideration is a bargain for exchange. That means if I give you this, you'll give me that. And without these three aspects, offer, acceptance, and consideration, a contract will not be valid. Thank you. Next slide. So the key terms of a contract we have the parties, and you want to also include important information in these contracts like the full name of the parties or the business, the address, um, let's see. And you also want to include definitions of important words that will be included in the agreement so as to avoid any ambiguity. And it also keeps individuals on the same page. And you can do that. You can provide definitions and the introductory materials, which we call recitals. And if you have, again, if you have questions, you can also reach out to our department and we can explain these further as, again, this is a brief introductory um, webinar to these terms. Next slide. Rich contracts must be in writing. As mentioned, contracts that are over the contracts for sale or services or goods that are over $500. So if it's $501, $500.01. That's still over $500. So it will need to be in writing to satisfy the statute of frauds. And if it will take more than a year to complete reasonably, then it has to be in writing. And again, if you're promising to pay the debt of another, then that also has to be in writing. Next slide, please. So to recap, you want to make sure that you document all communications and agreements. You want to ensure clarity and prevent misunderstandings when you're drafting a contract. You want to identify key terms and outline important definitions and conditions, highlight critical points for clarity in agreements, and you want to obviously seek legal counsel for advice and guidance, and probably have an attorney review any contract that you may enter. I wouldn't solely rely on uh, contracts that you find online. You want to make sure that the contract is beneficial to you and that you're protected in said agreement. Next slide. So we'll get into intellectual property. Okay, so we'll discuss briefly copyrights versus trademark versus trade secrets and patents. So copyright law, and firstly, I'll state this, for copyrights and trademarks, they do not need to be registered formally. However, doing so provides you with certain statutory benefits as well as protections, and it will also determine should you want to sue someone to protect your IP that you've created. It will determine which court that you'll file in, if it's registered or not. So copyrights covers books, materials, uh, songs, plays, scripts, videos, film, architectural drawings. So as a small business owner, if you have materials that you'll potentially give to your employees or even an employee handbook can be copywritten, or your internal process. You may want to, okay, I'll get into that. But if there's certain materials that you want to protect that you're allowing others to use, then you would copyright that. And what I've seen most often will be like consulting businesses who have materials that they want to provide to their clients. They'll tend to copyright those to prevent others from reproducing those and using them in their own businesses. And again, copyrights protect the authors of the work. It must be original and non-obscene and in tangible form. So it has to be fixed. It can't be in your mind. And the length of a copyright is life of the author plus 70. And there are different lengths based on if the author is a corporation or an LLC versus an actual person. For trademarks, I mean, almost every business owner, this is important for you because this helps you protect the goodwill of your business. Your brand is a combination of your reputation, your goodwill in the community. It helps consumers in the marketplace identify your products, and they know that based on your trademark, they're expecting to receive a certain quality associated with your trademark or your service mark. So there's a trademark or a service mark, right? And before you actually register your trademark or service mark, either with California, so you can register your service mark, which is for services. So like if you're a maid company or an entertainment company, or I don't know, you provide educational services. Those are all service marks. Uh, you can you can register in California, or you can register nationally with the USPTO. If you register in California, that's if your business or your goods are only going to be provided within the state of California and nowhere else. However, if your goods or services are available across state line and which is interstate commerce, then you would want to file with the USPTO. And some of the requirements for a successful registration with either the state or the USPTO, your goods or services have to be used in commerce, meaning they have to be available to the public. So a lot of times, if you have a website that will push you into the USPTO, United States Patent and Trademark Office realm, because generally someone from another state can go onto your website and access your goods or services. And this will allow you to show to the USPTO or California essentially that you're in commerce. And registration gives you extra protection. It allows for statutory amounts, especially with trademarks. So if someone infringes on your trademark, and you're registered with the USPTO, there can be fines ranging from $750 to up to $30,000 and a cumulative amount of $150,000 per incident. And the length of trademark protection depends on whether or not you're still providing your goods or services in commerce. So as long as you're providing your goods or services in commerce and you keep up with the requirements of registration, your trademark can go on almost indefinitely. And so an example of a trademark is the Apple logo. Your your brand, your logo can add immeasurable value to your business. And again, it creates a commercial reputation for your business. So clients can expect a certain quality when they see your logo, your brand, and they can distinguish your goods or products from anyone else in the market based on your logo or your word mark, right? And so again, to be eligible, you want to make sure that your goods or your logo or your brand or your name is unique and fanciful, that no one else is using it in the marketplace or that it's not confusingly similar to a brand that someone else is using. So you always want to do an in-depth search, either on the USPTO website. I highly recommend going to TESS. It's the Trademark Electronic Search System. And this is the database that allows you to search to see if someone else is using your name. You can do a social media search. You can also go on the California Secretary of State and see if anyone has registered your trademark there. So whoever has used the mark first has the right of first use in that geographical area. So if someone is using the mark in California and nowhere else, and you register your mark potentially with the USPTO, depending on if they have exclusive use, because there are instances where you can register a mark but not have exclusive use of the word or brand, which also kind of takes away. Okay, Mr. Spears, what would you like I'm sorry, I'm going to answer questions. What would you like an example of? And then trade secrets, this is probably the easiest way to protect your IP because, and an example of a trade secret would be like the Coca-Cola recipe. So they've protected this recipe for maybe 100 years. And even when an employee tried to sell this non-public information to Pepsi, Pepsi sold, or let me see, Pepsi reported the client. What about a product you make? Uh, the client, or reported the employee that attempted to sell these the recipe, and that person went basically to jail. So if you know that information has been highly protected and someone tries to give it to you and it's non-public, then you can probably be sued for willingly accepting that information. So you have to be careful. But you can protect your internal process, your recipe for your products, I don't know, cosmetics, soda, whatever it is, by ensuring that you um, make sure that your employees maybe sign an NDA and other types of agreements that would prevent them from disclosing your information, which is highly important. You can put a clause in an NDA that states, if you make public any of my proprietary information, I will experience irreparable harm, and you're gonna be liable for like $1 million lawsuit. I've seen that in NDAs all the time. You can put a specific amount in there that will prevent, or yeah, it will discourage someone that you interact with, and a, I don't know, an investor or a vendor who you're working with that may produce your products from disclosing whatever information they become privy to by working with you. You can control that within agreements. And yes, NDA stands for a non-disclosure agreement, or it's also known as a confidentiality agreement. And these type of agreements prevent others from releasing any information they become privy to by working with your business in whatever aspect. Because you may work with a manufacturer, an investor, a vendor, a graphic designer, someone like that who may become, again, aware of information that you don't want public regarding your regarding your business or its operations. So to protect yourself, it's important to have a set of contracts for different types of individuals or entities that you may interact with as a business owner. And patents covers designs, novel designs, or innovations that you as a business owner may create, and it's a complex process. Your inventions are generally only protected between like 18 and 20 years, and then after that, unless you improve on it some more, it goes into the public domain, and then anyone can use that. Trade secrets, so long as you keep your internal process tight and you make individuals sign certain agreements that can remain indefinitely. And again, trademarks, so as long as you're using your brand in commerce and you um, stay abreast of the requirements imposed by the USPTO for sending in information every certain amount of years that shows that you are still in commerce and providing those goods or services to the public. That was a lot. If I have a business logo that has my name in it, okay, well, I'll answer that. What I know, so a copyright does not protect a brand name at all. You would only use a trademark. So copyright, so for trademark, it's for a slogan like just do it, or a word mark, which is Apple, or a logo, which is the actual photo of the logo. So there are different ways you can register your trademark. It can be just a word, it can be just a logo, or it can be a combination of both. And some people do a combination of both to save money, because if you do a logo versus a word mark, it'll be two separate applications. And the application for a trademark is based on how many classes you file your logo or word mark under. There are 45 different classes. The first 36 classes within the USPTO cover products. The last 9 covers services specifically. So it's either services or products. And again, copyright only covers like materials, songs, artwork, handbooks, plays, whatever it is, films. And while trademark protects your brand name, or the logo associated with your brand. Okay, so next slide. Ooh, and I'll try to get through the employment law section really quickly. Next one. Oh, actually, let's go back. There is another application that you can file with the USPTO, which isn't offered through California, and this is the intent to use application. This means that although you haven't met the requisite of having your goods or services available to the public, you intend to do so within a certain amount of time. And I'll see some people file an intent to use application so that they can have a specific date of when they registered. So that will establish a right of a first right of use. And this also gives you protection even in the intent to use stage. And sometimes I'll tell people, if you want to save money, make sure that you have everything ready and then file, because the intent to use application is $225, and then you have to pay additional monies to transfer it to either a standard application or a T's plus application. And these designation, um, there are certain nuances within those designations for the application. So if you want, please reach out to our department and we can go into those a little bit further if you are eligible for our services, as we're doing a general review of that today. So next slide. Thank you. So next is employment law, which we'll cover very briefly. Two of the most important things, or is determining, well, actually, one of the most important aspects of a business owner is determining whether someone you engage to do services for your business is an employee versus an independent contractor, because that will determine whether or not you need workers' comp insurance, and if you have to register with the EDD and other considerations so you don't get sued and end up going bankrupt as a business owner, because failing to classify your either an independent contractor or an employee properly can have significant legal ramifications on your business, right? It could lead to someone who you thought was an employee who's actually, or an independent contractor who's actually an employee, potentially filing a wage claim with the Department of Industrial Relations. And I've seen this happen where a wage claim, you didn't pay someone on time, and then they file a claim, and it could end up costing you even hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if someone is an actual employee and say you're 2 weeks late paying them, but you thought they were an independent contractor, if they go to the Department of Industrial Relations, they will take the amount that you owe and they can multiply that up to 30 days. So if you didn't pay them for 2 weeks and they're considered an employee, they'll take the number 15 and multiply that by what you owe them and then go after you for that. And if you don't pay, then your business will essentially get shut down and you'll go bankrupt. So the test to determine whether or not an individual is an employee or an independent contractor is the ABC test. And this is a legal standard used to determine whether a worker is classified as employee or independent contractor. This classification is crucial for determining the rights, tax obligations, and responsibilities of both the worker and the hiring entity. So under this test, a worker is considered an employee and not independent contractor unless the hiring entity meets all of the following conditions. So is there autonomy for control and direction? If you're considering someone to be an independent contractor, they must be free from the control and direction of you, the business owner. This freedom is assessed in terms of the contract outlining the work to be performed and the actual manner in which the work is conducted. And you also want to consider whether or not you're supervising the person, if you're making decisions over over the work process, and if you're determining their schedule. Um, Also, the performance of this individual must be outside the normal course of your business. So if you are, let's see, a hairdresser and you hire another hairdresser, they're probably going to be an employee because it's within the course of your business. But if you're a hairdresser and you're hiring an accountant, a graphic artist, I don't know, someone from marketing, someone to clean your office, like a maid service. Those are all outside the normal course of your business. So it's going to look more like this person is an independent contractor, right? And then also, you want to look, well, yes, you want to look and see whether or not this individual is customarily engaged in an established business outside of the work that you're doing. So, um, for example, the worker must be engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, or business that is of the exact nature that you're hiring them for. So if you're the hairdresser, you're hiring a marketing professional. They'll tend to have a business specializing in marketing, and people will seek the services of their business specifically for that. If that well, and if you have questions, you can ask at the end. So again, it comes down to the degree of control, whether or not it's the service that they're providing is within the normal course of your business, and whether or not this person is in an independently established trade for the type of work that you're requesting. So next, we'll discuss employee rights. Employee rights are established essentially by law and also by your employee handbook and an employment agreement. And the the employee handbook is critical, and in some professions, it's a requirement. But this employee handbook will outline your company's policies, procedures. It will outline the company history, the values, policies like how they'll address equal employment opportunities, discrimination, harassments, benefits, and compensation, and procedures for grievances and disciplinary actions. And then the employment agreement is a formal contract between the employer and the employee, and it'll tend to include information about the job title, the description, the compensation details, duration of employment, if that applies, confidentiality and no compete agreements. However, no compete agreements in most cases are not valid in California. That's a whole nother area. And it'll also outline conditions under which employment may be terminated. So next slide. Okay, almost, I went over a little bit, but pretty much made it. Thank you so much. And if you have additional questions, I highly recommend that you reach out to our department and review our resources and or fill out our application. And if you're eligible for our services, we will represent you. And if we can't, then we'll direct you to the appropriate uh, pro bono services. And thank you so much. I spoke so fast. Okay, and now for questions. Sorry.
No, thank you, Mar. That was really awesome. I know, as I mentioned, and before our presentation, I feel so empowered after listening to you and getting a lot of the information that you shared. So thank you for being with us today. I'm trying to review. Okay, someone just
As a
shared a.
sole proprietor, no, you do not have to register with FinCEN.
Okay,
Sole proprietors do not have to do so.
okay.
Yeah, it's only for LLCs and corps. So you're off the hook, Mr. Garlington. You're
Uh,
welcome, Mr. Judah. And thank you, John Lynn.
we have another question. I am a newly certified mediator. Does your organization offer mediation services to clients? Maybe they want to volunteer.
You know what? That could be helpful. Please reach out to us because we do negotiate on behalf of our clients. And if we actually have a licensed or a certified mediator, that could be very helpful. So please reach out to our department and I will forward your information. Well, actually, I'll put our directing attorney's information in the chat. Her name is Nadia Segura, and she will ultimately decide. But we always look forward to having uh, volunteers for our program, and Nadia is pretty awesome. So I'll put her, and she's again our directing attorney, and I'll put her email here. So please feel free to reach out to her.
Okay. And I've also entered the it's a deck intake form if anyone wants to schedule an appointment. I know after just hearing your discussion about the business entity information, if I were to start a business, I would sign up for a one-on-one consultation because you really went into the nuances, very specific. So I would hope people would take advantage of that. I think it gives you an opportunity to take a look at like the full breadth of that decision, depending on the type of business you decide to do. Yeah, so I encourage everyone. And I know that many people, it's one of the most sought out to service, especially the contract review. So also, but if you go ahead and look at the intake form, it gives you all the different types of business assistance that BitSidex provide. I'm sure you can click all of them, but one at a time. So there's a
Okay.
question. You mentioned the program to cover half of a salary of an employee. Okay, that's a PACE business service and it's through our WorkSource Center. Yes, if you like to learn more, uh, Chris, I'll make a note of it. We just need very just basic information about your business, and we will make the referral to our WorkSource Center. So I'll make a note of that, Chris.
And then lastly, really quickly, Judah, I see your, or Ezekiel, I see your question. That's a little specific and we need more context. So please feel free to reach out by filling out an application and we'll see if we can and direct you to the appropriate resources or take you on as a client.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
So with that, we're at time. I want to end and start at the right time. So thank you everyone for joining us and just give another round of applause to Attorney Mar. Thank you for being with us and sharing all your wealth of information.